Dear Sagittarius, someone brought your photo to a keeper of seals. Not a typical prophet, but one who reads the cracks in time. An act that seemed harmless, but shook the depths of a soul's dimension. The moment he saw you, the air began to shift. Not because you were special, but because your soul had once stood at the edge between two worlds. Not a person anymore, but something. A fire symbol awakening. He did not tremble from fear, but from realization. You, Sagittarius, were never from a single place. You are a soul that has traveled across many worlds to fulfill a forgotten vow. In this video, you will understand why a blurry photo with no name, no date of birth could unlock a destiny gate sealed for hundreds of lifetimes. But more than that, you'll realize everything you thought had abandoned you has only been traveling back in another form. And the first thing you must do is step through the gate that has just opened. That photo was never just an image. It is a sacred seal. They thought they were merely showing someone a picture of you, a polite gesture, a passing glance. But to the universe, the smallest things are often the key to what no one dares to name. That prophet, he had never known you. He only received a photo, blurry, with no clear face, no date. But the moment he looked at it, the candle beside his hand began to flicker. Not because of wind, but because of frequency. The frequency of a soul who once carried fire, and whose fire is not yet out. He needed no proof. He knew in that moment, the one in the photo had once made a vow, had once set out, and now was returning. Have you ever felt that, Sagittarius? A moment that seemed so trivial, yet shook your entire inner being? Not because it was important, but because it arrived at the perfect time. A glance from a stranger, a dream that made no sense, an intuition rising like a small flame in your chest. And then, every memory you thought you had buried rushed back like a river running backward. And this time, Sagittarius, it was the gaze of a stranger, but somehow they were calling your name. Not your body's name, but the name of your soul from a place beyond language. You don't need to understand it all, but you're already feeling it. Because the truth, for a Sagittarius, never needs to be seen, only believed. Never needs to be touched, only felt. Dear Sagittarius, in Buddhist teaching, there's a concept called unintentional karma. Actions that arise without deliberate intent, without awareness or calculation, but still emerge from a stream long set into motion within the subconscious. So, the moment someone offered your photo, not out of love, not out of hate, seemingly unconscious, was precisely the moment karma chose to awaken you. Not to harm, but to awaken. Not to end, but to dismantle. And that was the moment the reverse tower card turned over. To others, that's collapse. But to you, Sagittarius, it's purposeful cleansing, an ancient foundation now being cleared because the original light within you is on its way back. At first, he said nothing. He just looked, silent, as if the entire room was being held still by an invisible presence. Then suddenly, he placed his hand on his chest, not to check his heartbeat, but because his chest had just recognized something sacred was drawing near. A whisper slipped out, as if he were praying in an ancient language. This soul has returned. And he called that photo a summoning seal. Sagittarius, that photo, is no longer just your likeness. It has become an invitation, not for the human eye, but for the sacred frequencies, guarded by your soul's protectors. It has awakened unfinished karmic threads. It has called back the fragments of light in you that had been sleeping for far too long. And they've heard it. They are stirring. From that moment on, your life will no longer be the same. Even if you may not feel anything too extraordinary, not at first. But a strange dream will return. A foreign symbol will appear. Someone from your past will suddenly speak your name. Or you, in a moment that feels absolutely real, will whisper the name of someone without knowing why. Don't be afraid. This is not a hallucination. This is confirmation from the universe. You have been seen, not by the eyes of flesh, but by the gaze of the spirit. And the greatest lesson for you, Sagittarius, the one who's always running after truth, is this. You do not need to prove anything. You don't have to scream that you are worthy. You don't have to argue for someone to understand you. You only need to exist, exactly as you are, and the light will find you. Because fire does not need to be taught to burn. And a soul that has once shined cannot stay hidden in darkness forever. Close your eyes for a moment. Do you feel something approaching? Not danger, but recognition. Your soul is being approached by an energy it has never encountered before. And then, the prophet begins to dream. A white owl stands silently at the window. Its eyes never leave your photo, not even for a second. Did you know? The white owl is an ancient symbol of those who guard souls in the night. They do not arrive with light. They only appear when something in the darkness is about to awaken. And what left that man bewildered was not what he saw, but what could not be put into words. Because the light from your soul does not belong to any modern astrological system. It cannot be mapped on ordinary star charts. It comes from an ancient covenant, one only souls who have lived and died many times can truly recognize. You've been misunderstood before, called too dreamy, too idealistic, too sensitive, but maybe that was never too much. Maybe it was a code, a way the universe preserved a piece of memory within you, so that, when the time was right, you would open your own door. And today, Sagittarius, that door is opening. Not because you begged, but because you are ready. Dear Sagittarius, if you've ever felt deep in your heart that someone finally saw you, not with their earthly eyes, but with the gaze of spirit, you weren't wrong. Because when a soul inherits light from many lifetimes, it can never stay hidden forever. And if you write those words, just one line, I have been seen, then you've just agreed with the universe. And you've also just opened the gate for your light to rise. Not by earthly clocks, but by divine timing. And in the next chapter, you will hear the words of the prophet who saw you, stood up within 7 seconds of holding your photo, as if witnessing a sacred vision the world had never dared to face. And this is not just a message, it is a summons. And the soul being called is you. When the second card was drawn, his hand froze midair. No one touched him. But something cold, like wind from an ancient mountaintop, passed through. His hand recoiled, as if it had brushed against a burning flame. His eyes closed. His lips whispered words in a forgotten tongue. Words no one could quite hear, but everyone present could feel it in their hearts. A wave, one that only ancient souls could recognize, had just been awakened. This was no longer a tarot reading. This was a face-to-face encounter with divine light. A light that needs no introduction, no explanation. It only needs to exist, and everything else will step aside. Sagittarius, have you ever doubted that your light was too small? Have you ever lowered your gaze because your sensitivity felt like weakness? Have you ever wondered if you were fading in a noisy, indifferent world? The truth is, your light was never fragile. It was only too fierce for most to look at directly, and so they turned away. Not because you weren't enough, but because they weren't ready. That prophet, the one who had read hundreds of souls, had never felt a frequency vibrate the way yours did. The card he drew was the reversed tower. Not destruction anymore, but survival. The mark you carry is not of a triumphant conqueror, but a silent warrior, who passed through every quake without weapons, without noise, only presence. In Buddhist teachings there is a word, Brahmacharya, a state so pure nothing can defile it. When a soul reaches that threshold, everything around it begins to shift. No one needs to explain, they simply feel the need to bow. You don't need to shout to be seen. You don't need to argue to be acknowledged. Because there are frequencies that change the room simply by arriving. Sagittarius, you were once the quietest person in the room, but the one who touched the most hearts. You were once called dreamy, too soft, too tender. But today, I want you to know that sensitivity is sacred armor. It is the gift God gave you, so you could remain gentle in a world that's grown cold. Your gentleness is not a flaw. It is a compass for souls who have lost their way. And when the second card was turned, the prophet didn't just step back, he bowed. Not out of fear, but because he knew this soul cannot be summoned casually. No one is allowed to read you unless you give permission. No one may touch your light unless they are pure enough not to be burned. They once underestimated you, not because you weren't enough, but because your light exposed the shadows within them. They turned away, not because you were boring, but because in your presence, they couldn't pretend. You're no longer a mirror. You are a lighthouse. And not everyone is ready to face a light they cannot dim. Pause for a moment. Take a deep breath. Do you remember the last time someone truly saw you? Not your body, not your name, but you. Unedited, unshrunk, unjudged. It may have been a long, long time. And so today I tell you this story. Because the truth is, you don't need to shrink to be loved. You don't need to dull down to survive. You don't need to be softer so others won't be afraid of. That second card was your confirmation. You've walked a path that no one else witnessed. You've carried silence like a sacred blade. And the light within you not only never went out, but now is blazing. And in that moment, a whisper echoed across the room. Right then, a voice from beyond the veil murmured an ancient warning: do not touch this soul. No one else heard it, only the prophet. But he understood. He knew this was no threat. It was a sacred warning. You are now surrounded by a shield of light from higher realms, a barrier that cannot be pierced. No one can cross it unless you open the gate from within. Since that day, he began to dream. Each time he closed his eyes, he saw a white owl standing guard at the window, its eyes glowing like fire and snow, not threatening, just watching. Like an ancient presence quietly reminding you, you are the chosen soul. Have you ever seen a gaze that didn't belong to this world? A frequency no one around you could hold? Maybe you don't feel special. But that's exactly why, slowly, the world around you has begun to shift. People who once left are brushing past you again. Doors that were once sealed are creaking open. Emotions you thought were long burned are flickering again like glowing embers. This is not random. You've just crossed a threshold your soul cannot return from. The light you carry has been seen, and once a light is seen, nothing can extinguish it. When the third card was drawn, everything stopped, because a voice echoed from another dimension. Do not look away from what is revealing itself. This was no longer a prediction. It was a confirmation from the place where you truly belong. From that moment on, no one dared touch the next card. The room was no longer a room, but a silent sanctuary. No one spoke. No one moved. Only one thing was still in motion. Fate. Not loud, not showy, like a great wind sweeping across a forgotten field, carrying the scent of untouched grass, awakening seeds you once believed were dead. From that moment on, Sagittarius, your soul stepped through an invisible gate. There was no blinding light, no ringing bells, just a quiet convergence, repeating numbers, dreams that kept returning. Encounters that once seemed random suddenly revealed themselves as meetings written lifetimes ago. And you began to remember. This journey, you wrote it before you were ever born. But you'd forgotten, lost in the noise of the world. Do you feel it? Lately, time doesn't move the way it used to. It pulls you, faster, deeper. As if there's no time left to hesitate. An unseen hand is gently pushing you forward. Not to escape, but to return. You might call it destiny or karma, but in the words of the Buddha, we call it this: the wheel of noble karma has begun to turn. You've stayed silent through pain, forgiven when no one apologized, stayed when your heart was already broken. All of those moments were recorded, not by human eyes, but by the eye of Dharma. And now, that wheel is not spinning to crush you, but to lift you, gently, quietly, and nothing can stop it. On the astrological map, Jupiter, your ruling planet, is moving into the light, not to bless you, but to restore everything that was once delayed, the prayers forgotten, the efforts unseen. Now, they are blooming. You don't need to chase anymore, because what belongs to you is now chasing you. You feel it in every heartbeat of time, in every word that seems accidentally written just for you. But most of all, you feel it right there in your chest. Place your hand on it. Do you feel that? It isn't just blood pulsing, it's the rhythm of a soul that has just been awakened. The dreams are clearer, the intuition sharper. These dreams are no longer illusions. They are maps written in feeling, made solely for your soul. The pain no longer intimidates you, because now you understand it was once a door, and now you hold the key. It's not that you've changed. It's that you've remembered who you are. And when you remember, the universe remembers, the earth remembers, and the souls that vibrate on your same frequency begin to return to you like birds after a storm. That prophet, who witnessed the entire shift, drew one final card, not with his hand, but with the tremble of intuition. From the old deck, an image rose like white fire, a throne made of light, guarded by two salt lions, symbols of wisdom and eternity. Your name was carved there, not in earthly letters, but in soul script, only given to those who've completed a deep karmic cycle. He said nothing more, because from that moment on, something immense began to move around you, and nothing can stop it. Not gossip, not slander, not denial, because now you no longer need anyone's permission. The spirit realm has recognized you, Sagittarius, not through display, but through energy. You once prayed in silence, looked up at the sky, not expecting a reply, but because your soul knew, silence is also a kind of promise. And today, the answer is you. The new life you're sensing, it isn't approaching. It is climbing mountains, crossing forests, piercing karma to return to you. And the most beautiful part is, you don't have to do anything. Just keep walking, with faith. Because every path you now walk has been cleansed by the tears you once thought were meaningless. If you've ever felt forgotten, write this down. I no longer have to chase what belongs to me, because what's mine is already finding its way to me. And you think that's the most beautiful thing? Not yet, Sagittarius. What's coming next, no one is prepared to receive. A warning, not spoken from the human throat, but a sacred signal, summoned from the realm your soul once belonged to. You will hear something that even the prophet did not dare to repeat. A secret, only spoken aloud when a soul of true light is present. From that moment on, you could no longer return to the you once were. The instant the prophet saw the throne etched with your name, something in the invisible realm began to shift. The reading was no longer a reading. The simple gestures became a sacred activation. You were not decoded, you were summoned. And what started it all was not some grand decision, but an unconscious act. Someone showed your photo to another. Just a photo, one that seemed forgotten. But in the spirit world, it was a code, like a key that no longer remembered what it once locked, yet still found the right door. That was the moment the gate opened, and you, Sagittarius, stepped through. No bells rang, no instructions came. Only nights where you dreamed of light and woke up in tears. Conversations suddenly felt like they no longer belonged to you. You once wanted to be smaller, tidier, easier to understand. You once tried to soften your light, just to be loved. But the truth is, your soul did not come here to fit in. You came here to awaken, not to please. You didn't learn this from others. You learned it from the years you lived without being fully yourself. And the light you carry continues to pour through the cracks even when you tried to hide it. Born to shine. In Buddhist teachings, there is a stage called mincha, the final awakening. The moment when you can no longer pretend, when you no longer have the strength to shrink, to avoid, to dim the light that was born to shine. You are no longer who you were, not out of pride, but because your soul has shifted. Your story is no longer about who loves you, who believes you, or who chooses to stay. It's about this. Do you have the courage to stand fully in your own light, even if it means standing alone? There was a time you thought, if only I could be accepted. But the real lesson is this. You don't need to be accepted. You only need to accept yourself. You don't need to belong to anyone else's life. Because now, the universe is opening an entirely new reality. A sacred dwelling where no word can hurt you anymore. A place where only souls who've gone far enough, who've endured deep enough, are invited to enter. Dearest Sagittarius, remember, there was once someone who passed by your photo, not knowing. They had just accidentally activated a sacred vow. And that vow can no longer be undone. They once treated you like an object, as if you could be discarded, as if you had no value. But that very act forced the heavens to restructure everything around you. Not to punish, but to erase all that no longer belongs and to prepare to quietly return to you what was once taken. And this time you won't need to fight for anything, because light always knows the way home. And from that moment on, every effort to prove yourself can be let go. You don't have to do more to be worthy. Just be. Like a candle that doesn't try to shine and yet still ignites the dawn. No blame, no justification. Just receive. Do you feel you're no longer the person you once were? Things that once brought you joy no longer call to you. Places that once made you feel like you belonged now feel like velvet-lined cages. Relationships you once thought were essential now leave you quiet in your own heart. Not because you've grown cold, but because your frequency has changed. And in this new vibration, only what is truly worthy may enter. Ask yourself, Sagittarius, with the new light within you, what will you use it for? You don't need to answer right now. Just let the question ring softly like an ancient bell in a mist-covered temple. If you feel you no longer belong to the old world, then write this down. I have stepped into a new level. I no longer ask for permission to exist. Because what you are about to enter is no longer a normal life, but a chapter written by God, where you don't need to prove anything, only to be. And at the end of this journey, we will walk together into the holiest of spaces, where every soul is called back to its true place. Not a place to hide from the world, but a place where the world can no longer harm you. And then you'll understand, all the chaos that happened was never meant to destroy you. It had only one purpose, to summon you back to the temple of your soul, to the place where your light no longer needs to shrink, to the place where you no longer need to live by someone else's expectations to be loved. They didn't know that what they thought was a careless act would awaken your truest self. This is no longer the story of a photograph. It's no longer the story of a prophet. It is the story of an ancient ritual being reawakened. An old bell rings in a temple no one has entered for centuries. A call meant only for you. A summons to return to the light you once tried to extinguish, just to make others more comfortable. From this moment on, you will no longer shrink to fit their expectations. No longer step back to keep the peace. No longer wonder if your light is too bright. Because now you know, true light needs no permission. You, Sagittarius, are no longer the one who silently endures. You are the one who activates destiny. The soul seen by the eyes of the higher realms. And from this moment on, nothing can ever go back to how it was. They once trembled when they saw your light. So imagine, what would happen if you finally dared to look straight into it yourself? To walk straight into it. Take a deep breath, and if you are ready, write this down as an eternal declaration. I am ready to live with the light my soul was born with. Thank you for walking this path with me, all the way to the final moment. I know it's not easy to sit in stillness and receive a message like this. Unless your heart has once been broken, unless you've wandered alone through the night trying to find your way back to yourself, unless you've prayed without daring to speak the words. And so I send you my deepest blessing. May you always be wrapped in the light you carry. May you be loved without needing to make yourself smaller. May you live a life so whole, you no longer need permission to be who you are. I will meet you again in the next layer of light.